Hey, Jen.
Hello, let me just check my, oh yeah, cool. Yep, got my mic.
Working on my side.
Perfect, hi. Let me,
All right, now I should be able to hear you.
oh, could you not hear me before?
No, I didn't hear you before. My audio wasn't working.
Oh, okay.
Jen
Cool.
Spencer, phenomenal at everything.
Hello.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
See you in an hour. He's gonna hop over the time that we're gonna be live. It's a joke.
Oh, I'm like, what?
How are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well. Been sleeping better because of this guy coming on board. Things are going well.
Oh, nice. Is there other panelists?
Just you. Just you.
Oh, okay.
We're just gonna shoot the breeze and learn from you as a thought leader. In this
Okay.
space.
All right, excellent. I thought for some reason I thought there was a panel, so I was like, okay.
Yeah, the panel's just with multiple co-hosts.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We're more of a crew than a panel.
Yeah. It's closing stuff I do not need.
Are we live?
Hey, Eric.
Oh, what's up?
All right.
Hey, Jen.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
I only say are we live because this is like every time we do this, it's like, are we live? Should we get on?
Eric and I did a full LinkedIn live yesterday that I realized after wasn't live for any of it, and it'll be going out in 14 different languages come whenever. I'm like,
Yeah.
Jared, I didn't even know you were going to be there too. And I literally entered and I was like, oh, Jared's here.
I didn't even know what was going on.
I didn't know what was going on.
When they asked me to join and they told me you were there, I'm like, I have no idea what's going on, but if Eric's there, I'm going.
They told me that there was 4 other people who were going to be there, and I was like, oh, I'll sit on a panel, like that's fine. And then it was just, yeah, it was very odd yesterday. It was
one of the most odd experiences ever.
But I'm glad we did it together.
Yeah.
The guy was talking to us like off a sheet over here, and he's just like, and I'm like, you're not.
Yeah, it was funny. By the way,
I
will have to go probably halfway through, but we can run it.
All right, we ready? All right, we should be live now.
There we go. We're getting better and better about this.
Go Zoom.
Please don't say that, Eric. That's a great way to guarantee.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Oh man, well, welcome to another episode of Outbound 2.0 with Rev Genius. We're excited to have Jen Spencer here with us today. Jen is CEO at SmartBug Media. You're out of Phoenix, right?
I am. I'm in the Phoenix area, but SmartBug is 100% fully remote. So we have our headquarters, our mailbox is technically in Orange County, California, but we actually have no office at all and never have and never will.
Fair enough. There's more and more doing that. I mean, we're basically that way at Rev Genius. I was up at our home office earlier this week. We had to go steal a conference room so we could both fit in it. So yeah, definitely familiar with that model. Well, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about what you guys do over at SmartBug.
Sure thing. So SmartBug Media is an intelligent inbound marketing agency. We support our clients that use one of two platforms, either HubSpot or Klaviyo. So all of our clients are either using one of those tools, and we're supporting mainly through demand generation efforts. So most commonly, we are driving sales pipeline for those organizations, and we really will do anything that remotely touches the digital marketing, sales, revenue operations, customer success experience. It's a great joy. We've got about 175 or so employees. So team members all over, working remotely, mostly in the US, a couple of folks in Canada, some folks in a couple of other international countries as well. So like El Salvador, Mexico, Even we've got someone in Serbia. So it's been a lot of fun getting to work with a diverse group of people.
That's awesome.
Jason,
Yeah,
before you jump in, I've actually always wanted to meet somebody from SmartBug Media. How do you rank #1 on the HubSpot ecosystem? How'd you do that? You're #1 every time you go to the ecosystem. SmartBug
We
Media is right
are.
there.
We're in that top left corner. It's prime
Yeah.
real estate. You know, it's doing exceptional work and also leveraging the work that we do, like leveraging the customer success that we're able to drive for our clients, using that to drive our flywheel. So, I mean, we expect really great things out of our team. So we think about like if our goal is that, what does it take to get a 5-star review from a client? So usually it's, well, like, do what you said. I mean, it's more than just do what you said you were going to do. It's owning those actual campaign goals and results. So we're really focused on driving revenue for our clients. And we know, like, if we can help them hit their goals, then in return, they're going to want to, tell the world what a great job we did. So it's just a testament to the work that the team's doing, frankly.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's how I found SmartBug. Like I was a client long ago, and they were in that top position. That's how I was like, all right, well, they're the best. So this is who I'm going to talk to first.
This is a much more. Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best inbound, right? But let's talk outbound.
Yes.
And how outbound has evolved, right?
Yeah.
Want to hear from you, Miss Top Left Corner of HubSpot ecosystem. We're all jealous of that.
Top left corner of my Zoom.
Top left corner of our Zoom. Debunk a myth about outbound and demand gen today.
Well, now you'll have me on your show knowing like I'm the inbound everything. I think I've got a sign right here. It's not quite lit. I could light it up. I forgot. It says we love inbound. So listen, like this is my jam. But so from an inbounder's perspective, I think one of the myths is like outbound never works. I know that's not true because I actually I'm buying something this week that came to me via outbound. But what I'll say is the best outbound is actually orchestrated inbound.
Amen.
Expound on that.
Well, if you think about what's the inbound methodology, right? I've haven't found anyone who disagrees with the methodology, like the actual that concept, right? Of okay, you've got this person, you've got this customer, this buyer, and they're experiencing certain pains, and you're trying to get in front of them as early as possible to help them realize what those pains are, to be with them in the background, supporting them as they're investigating, as they're figuring out how severe this pain is, and if it's something they can solve on their own, or they need some extra support, whether it's services or technology or whatever. And then you're ultimately coaching them through kind of the inbound methodology and the content and the campaigns that you're the best fit to help them with this problem that they now have. They decided that they recognize, they see it, they realize it, and they want to make a change. So versus, right, think about outbound, it's yeah, you can be hyper targeted and go, well, we know that these particular companies, these types of accounts are most likely to fit with our, like what we have. They don't know they have a pain, right? So we have to like push forward and we have to show them that they have a pain. We have to get in front of them. That's far more disruptive. So if I look at, well, how would I run an outbound team? Knowing I don't run an outbound team, right? We run inbound teams. But if I was running an outbound team, and when we support our clients that are practicing both outbound and inbound, we're looking at, well, how do you take that inbound methodology and how do you apply that? So if you're putting together an inbound campaign, how do you then extract from that a piece of that campaign that can be repurposed by those outbound team members, those, whether it's you're talking field marketing or you're talking about sales, right? And those individual sales reps. And you are like, in an ideal world, that person is sharing some of that same content at that appropriate stage of the journey, or where you think they are. And honestly, best case scenario is like they get actually swept up in your inbound campaigns, and ultimately might come in as a form fill on your website. It might kind of look like inbound, but it was actually done with that sales rep, with that outbound sales rep. So that sales rep, whether it's an SDR, BDR, or they're, a sales executive that's hunting for their own business, they're actually a layer in your inbound marketing strategy, helping you accelerate that campaign.
I'm pretty sure I have spoken those exact words.
Oh, great.
No, I mean, it's, anytime that I've run BDR teams, I always, if it's a named account, a BDR is working and it comes in through an inbound and they've done any activity relative to it, I'll count that as their meeting set. Because at the end of the day, I don't care. Like, do they come in, fill out a form? Do they reply to an email? Do they, pick up a phone call, whatever? And I mean, I've run experiments with it where it's like, what happens whenever we run, the inbound motions completely separate from what the sales team are doing. And then what happens whenever we overlap them? And it's like, it's clear, no matter where they're coming in from, it's making a difference and it's driving it.
Absolutely.
Now, is there a place for outbound in your org, or is there a place for it in addition to the inbound that you're running?
There's a place for orchestrated account-based selling, right? For orchestrated inbound, for that kind of outbound motion in our organization, for sure. Mostly with kind of building networks, referrals, right? Yeah. My team is not dialing for dollars. This is not a good use of their time. Better use of their time is to embody the inbound methodology and be reaching out to potential prospects, right? Reaching out to those individuals and say, hey, wanted to introduce myself. I thought, and leading with value, right? Leading with just thought you might want to take a look at this, not asking for anything in return, not asking for a meeting or anything, right? But sharing, this is something we found, whether it's a research report that we've been able to generate, or it's an example of, I hate to say case study, but like very, very tactical, very practical, like someone had this very, very specific problem or looked exactly like this. It looks kind of like you, maybe like, does this sound like you? Would this be helpful to you? Right. And it's also spending time in the communities where those potential customers are also spending their time. And again, it's leading with value, leading with the value in that point of that exchange, which I think is really different from the approach that a lot of outbound organizations have, which it's booking the call, it's booking the meeting, right? So I don't have a team that is compensated based off of the number of meetings they're able to book. Now we look at that metric, right? We look at how many meetings are they having? How many initial calls? How many of those opportunity discussion calls are they having on a weekly basis? And we know how many of those calls we need to have in order to hit our goals. But we also know that the leads that are coming in through inbound are going to close a lot faster than the ones where we are prospecting and we're nurturing and trying to build a relationship, which I think is, not uncommon, right?
Absolutely. Whenever you talk about inbound methodology, what all goes into the makeup of that? What are some of the primary KPIs that you guys are looking at relative to those?
Well, we're looking at a couple of things. We're looking at the amount of traffic that we're driving to our website. We're looking at the quality of that traffic. So by way of quality, I'm looking at what are the sources it's coming from, how are people finding us, and then also how much time are they spending on page? Are we able to answer their questions? Are we satisfying the need? And the KPIs are going to change depending on what part of the website they'd be on, right? So I think that's because there's some pages where like a high bounce rate's not a big deal. Like, great. Like there was a very specific question. They had it, they came, they answered, they left. versus other pages where you want to see, okay, there should be some kind of a transaction or some kind of a growth that's happening there. So we're looking at that. We're looking at number of SQLs that we're generating for sales. So hand raisers who are saying, yeah, I want to talk to someone on the sales team. And we're honestly not paying as close attention these days as much to like lead just top of funnel leads and MQLs. That's a whole other, like, I don't know if we want to go there. Whole other topic that has to do with like the current market and how the people we sell to are feeling overwhelmed with all of the information that's being shared with them and just kind of paralyzed. So those are some things we look at, and then we track based off of the source that it's coming in. Based off of that channel, we look at the deal velocity and the size of the deal as well. So all of those things are really important to tell us, well, where should we be spending more time and energy, right? So like non-inbound events from like a marketing perspective, like, you know, like live in-person events, right? We're sending sales reps out to those events. We're sending them out there to network, to connect with people, to share content in whatever way we can. So we look for opportunities to speak at events, making sure we've got time, like the proper time and resources for follow-up and meetups. And that's proven to be a really great, more outbound approach to how we're generating business for our teams. And it's so much more cost effective, truly, for me to take someone who, like one of our sales reps, Jackie, who owns our senior living vertical, which is a big industry for us, and to have her be out at that, like their big kind of annual event, that conference that every industry has at least one, right? Having her there, having her connecting with people, but also really supporting her with field marketing support, that kind of content, collateral, and speaker space, and then having integrated digital campaigns to follow up with all of those people that she is meeting. That is far more cost effective, and we have such a higher ROI on an exercise like that versus if I gave her a bunch of names and phone numbers and email addresses and said, go to town.
So yeah, that's the whole point of Outbound 2.0. It's saying that that's inefficient. With that said, we do believe that there's a bit of relevancy. Like, do you have her reach out to other people that might have been at the conference that might also have A, B, and C that maybe she didn't interact with? Because that person might be like, yeah, thank you so much for reaching out to me. I missed your speech. You had a full group of people around you when you were talking over there, and I was too scared. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say no. It's not only, it's like, no, that's a bad idea. I think it just comes down to like time, and I'd rather have her, you know, there's other things that other meetings I'd rather have her taking. But I would say that's where I provide air coverage with marketing. So you can do some really cool things with events, with geo-targeting and geolocation for ads. So if you want to actually you know, show ads to people who are going to be in that particular vicinity, that's something that we've done, right? Yeah. So it's you know, and it's also, if she hasn't met them, right, then there's really not that kind of personal connection at all. So I don't know. It's especially being a pro services organization like ours, we are very, very focused on like how much juice do we squeeze from that piece of fruit, right? That's a horrible analogy. Why did I just say that? But like, we're looking at like what the heck, like how many heads does it take to like drive X amount of revenue? And so what you tend to find in like a SaaS company is they'll say, well, we're less worried about our margins because, you know, we're focused on just adding like net new logos versus, and you're starting to see this actually with more technology, but in pro services, it's been, yeah, we want to grow, but we want to grow really healthily. Right. So we're also looking at that margin because it's people hours, people that are actually performing the work. So that bleeds into the way we think about sales and marketing as well. So when you look at the amount of time, the headcount that goes in, when you are like analyzing that data for your company on a weekly basis, you would go, okay, wait a minute, it doesn't make sense for us to have this one sales rep chase these potential opportunities. I would rather have her do a better job and go deeper with the opportunities she actually has right now.
Yep. I've run a couple of agencies. I get the model entirely, and you got to be really careful with what those hours are used for. So you had mentioned the MQL thing. I absolutely want to go there. So
Okay.
Definitely interested in, because I've got pretty strong opinions. I think everybody on this have pretty strong opinions.
But this is definitely your shtick. I was gonna say, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, you and Jen should just keep talking about that.
But yeah, I definitely want to hear kind of where you were thinking about going there.
Okay. So I'll tell you why I am less focused on leads and MQLs for our business right now. And I'm just going to say, like, I don't think it's not like I've always been this way. And it's not that I'm always going to be this way. It's like right now in this moment. Why? So a couple of reasons. One is we have industry data that says that people are just overloaded and they're not filling out forms. So how does an MQL, right, come into your world? In most organizations, right, I would say some organizations, they might be just downloading a list and throwing it into your CRM, and please don't do that, but that's a whole other topic too. But if they're coming in because they downloaded a guide or a tool, or they subscribe to your blog, right? And then you would get those leads, and then the inbound methodology is like, all right, and now we're going to run these people through nurture campaigns, nurture them along and get them to go from this beautiful world of like lead to MQL to SQL to opportunity to close customer, right? Sounds lovely. Doesn't actually happen in reality all that often, especially, now. So one is that people don't want to fill out forms because they don't want sales to call them, because with the market being contracted right now, it's sales outreach is at like an all-time crazy high. Yeah. So people who they get that, right, if this isn't their first rodeo, right, then they're going to think three times, right, about, do I want to actually submit this form? Like, what's going to happen next? So there's that. Also, just like the sheer number of emails people have in their inbox of like, do I really want to subscribe to this? Right. Whereas in the past, you might have been like, oh, sure, what's the big deal? I'm okay with that. People are going like, this is weighing on me, like the number of emails I get every day. And like, maybe I'm going to be a little bit more cautious about, I don't know, I don't really care that much about this. So we've got that. So you've got like a market that's telling you, we don't want to fill out your forms, period. So, all right. Great, but you still have an opportunity to actually practice inbound by providing that content, giving those tools to them, and using, there's other techniques you can have for tracking them. But that's one. The second thing is that we saw at the end of last year, especially, is with the Great Resignation, right? And so many people shifting around, and now we're seeing, layoffs throughout multiple industries, largely in tech. But when you look at someone's resume, there's no more of this, like we used to say, no, people aren't spending like 15 years at a company anymore. People aren't spending 5 years at a company anymore.
They're not spending 15 months at a company anymore.
I mean, it's right. It's like, it's not uncommon to see, like it used to be, if you saw someone like every year they got a new job as a hiring manager, you'd be like, what's going on there? Right. But
now it's every 4 to 6 months, some resumes.
Oh, that freaks me out a little bit.
Is fresh.
But it's like, if people are good and they're getting kind of poached, and they're like, it doesn't necessarily mean that like that person's not a good talent, right? So point of this story is when I look at like deals we were closing in the last quarter, there was a large quantity of them that were people that knew us from like 3 companies ago, but like all within the last year. So it's the idea that like, okay, you're going to track this one lead. That gets really, really complicated if you're not able to reconcile who they are versus who they are compared to like with the company and the role they happen to be in that moment when they first meet you. So you're so much better off like building that brand, delivering super high quality content, having a being, you know, considered that thought leader. I haven't heard anyone use that word in a little while. Thought leader kind of in the market, and making sure you have that like ongoing presence on a regular basis in the market. That's like makes more sense than like counting these leads that come in today, knowing like a month from now, those people may not even be in the company with the same company anymore.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, I barely look at MQLs or top of the funnel leads, whatever nomenclature you want to use, as any sort of a guide of success. It's like, you know, outside of maybe you can use it to say, is that content itself good? But as far as like, is that going to necessarily translate in the pipeline? I mean, you're such a long journey from there. And the idea of, I mean, I've had this one burn me more times than I can count, so much so that it didn't take me very long into my career that I stopped building nurturing campaigns. Because like you get that built, you get the content in there, and then you get busy with something else. You don't go revisit it for 6 months. And then you go in there and you wince. It's like, oh God, that content's so stale. It's so old, or like we've got the wrong stuff targeting the wrong people. Instead, I always like to just focus on, let's get a steady cadence of net new high quality content out. That'll take care of the nurturing. Like, don't go create some automated nurturing campaign that you're going to try and use in that the old classical model of it, because it gets stale, it gets old, stuff breaks, and you know, you're so much better off just spending that time and attention on creating that cadence of content.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I think there's still a place for really effective nurturing, like just really, really kind of thoughtful persona and pain-based nurturing. But you're right, it can't be like set and forget, and too many folks do treat it that way. And I remember we had a client a couple of years ago. They had over 100 different like workflows and nurtures, and they just came to us and they were like just. And it was because they just kept adding, and they didn't even know what was what. And so the first project was like, let's just audit and let's just get the things really cleaned up. And do you really need 100 or do you need more like 20? Right. Because then thinking Outbound 2.0, if you've got an effective lead nurture strategy that you know that campaign like seems to be working, that you're not losing people, and like, yeah, maybe it's not going to immediately go, okay, this is pipeline, but you're showing that you're keeping people engaged and they're consuming that content. To your point, it could actually really help inform some of those outbound sales activities, because, and I don't think a marketing nurture campaign and an outbound sales sequence, they should not be the same. They're not the same, right? No. Like the content structure, it's different, but there's a lot that you can borrow from marketing as a guide, because the sales sequencing is so much more labor intensive, because of well, hopefully if you're doing it right, because the deeper personal,
not the way a lot of people.
It should be more labor intensive.
There we go.
It should be more labor intensive. And so what do you do? How do you kind of make sure you're if you're going to spend all that time and energy and like all of those resources to create really hyper personalized outbound sequences, wouldn't it be nice to have them based off of some kind of marketing nurture success data? Right. So I think I would say like keep some of that in your stack, at least for some of the data, for nothing else.
Yeah, some of the things along that's been particularly effective lately is building in intentional intent signals that you put in there for people to be able to signal back into it, to be able to say, okay, hey, I'm going to pass this to a salesperson, and by what we've seen, what they've engaged with, whether it's pages on the site, types of content, whatever, these seem to be their hot buttons. And so now that rep is prepped ahead of time whenever they're doing their outreach, so they can target that based off of the intent signals you've seen, first party, and then even more powerful if you can pair that with third party intent signaling as well. I mean, that goes inbound, outbound, whatever, but Eric can speak to this. Like they're doing incredible things with some of the intent signals they're pulling in, and whether that's inbound or outbound, that's really been driving a lot of what I've seen success-wise.
I feel like it's the last stake of like what's actually going to work, because like loading up CTOs and just saying the same thing, right? Like what Jen was talking about, you need to take more time and care and everything. Yeah, no, and building your own intent signals too, because like Built With just added this feature. It called it future customers, and I'm like, great. What is it? Like, how do you know that it's a future customer, and what can I say to these people? Or am I just supposed to just blank message them? You know, like what am I supposed
What
to
is
say?
it? Do you know?
Oh yeah. So it's an algorithm. So it's an algorithm on the back end where they're claiming that like there's a certain technographic tier that people go on. And it's like, all right, so first you get HubSpot and then you graduate and you get Salesforce and you're like, and maybe Jen probably knows more about that. I'm just throwing it out there. But and so I think they're claiming like you're on this tech stack, and now they used to not have anything, and then they upgraded to Zoom Info. Oh, they're more of an enterprise data client now. Okay, they're going to need a different stack. I think that's what they're doing. But the stuff that we're pulling in is, wow, notice that your headcount grew by 25% in the past 3 months. You know, you must be going through some growing pains, which we could actually message to that. We could actually say something versus like Bombora's data is like, great.
Oh,
but what do I say?
So Intelligence is trying to predict tech stack based on hiring, and they actually predicted people leaving jobs. That was their first product.
Yeah.
Relatively successfully enough to be at this point now.
Yeah.
And they're repurposing and they're going into the intent because there's just such a broader market for that than selling recruiters. And it's very interesting what's out there.
Yeah. I think that whole concept, you know, what you were talking about, it's, you know, it's interesting. We did something similar, gosh, back like when I was running sales and marketing at Outbound, right? Like we knew when we like thought about like who our ICP was, we knew, okay, there's a very specific tech stack that ICP has. And so we wanted to focus in on like, just it's, you can't boil the ocean, you know, and that was, we were an early stage startup. And you only have so much time and resource, right? So if you can get any of that sort of information, it's interesting, Eric. It's like, it doesn't mean that like, well, they're ready to buy from you, but it means, well, they're not, you're not going to disqualify them, right? Like you don't want to waste your time prospecting into an org that you're going to later go, oh, just kidding. You're not a good fit for us. Although I've yet to see, and I've used couple of different tools, but I've yet to see a tool that is really that accurate when it comes to tech stack. So I think that that part of the market needs to evolve a little bit.
Hey,
Yeah,
Eric,
I mean, I think, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add, have you created audiences with those intent people and run paid ads on them?
You're muted.
Because that
great. Yeah. So I have a customer doing that right now, actually, where we grabbed as much personal data of people that fit, and then we made a whole other bucket of people that then fit the Bombora data for that channel. So yeah, we're testing that now. Results still TBD, but yeah, that's mostly what we'll use the intent data for. I also like using intent data to just layer on other things like some great triggers are just keywords on people's websites. So then it's like, all right, let's take this intent data. They're already looking for it. Hey, I looked up your website and I noticed this keyword, but we actually use Google to do all of this scraping to get all of this out. But it's all about, like we've talked about before, sending an email message that we could automate, but people say like, did they manually do this, or was this automated? So yeah, but that's usually where we use intent signals.
I love this new restaurant in New Milford, New Jersey. It's like that type of stuff.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, and so
he lives there off the record.
Yes.
So I was like, what? Where?
Yeah.
Where?
So the reason he's saying that is because I think, and this still goes into Outbound 2.0, there's relevance and then there's personalization. And so I think every email message should have both. And so the relevance is what I was talking about before. Hey, your sales department grew by 25%.
Yeah.
You must be going through some head pains or growing pains. You know, we have a solution, whatever you want to pitch right after that, right? That's your relevance. And then the personalization is like, you know, hey, Jason, notice you've been the chief operating officer at RevGenius for 2 months, right? And we could put that in there to make people feel like, oh, like, were they on my LinkedIn profile? And then we'll have PS lines like he was talking about, like I'll call out the top restaurant in their area and say like, hey, you know, have you ever tried it? Or like my favorite one right now is taking a past company that they used to work at and then pulling a person who holds a similar role currently at the company and then being like, PS, notice you used to work at this company. Did you happen to work closely with this person? And just making them wonder, like, is this automated, or like, did they manually send this? Is the the whole name of my game.
And I saw you went to high school here. Was this
Yeah.
your senior this year?
Yeah.
It can go too far, right? Because
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
and it's also like based off of the data you have. Like I get so many messages from people, both on like LinkedIn automated stuff and also in my email inbox, because I'm a member of like different communities, right?
Yeah.
And so, but it'll just all kind of come in and they assume like I lead a certain effort in one of those communities of which I'm a member. So I'm like, I'm not a lead. Like I'm not like, that's not what I do. Right. Like, that's not like that, just kind of that misfit. So there's, danger there.
My favorite story of taking that stuff too far. This was really early in my career. We had just bought Pardot back before Salesforce had acquired them. And we were like, oh, hey, we can see who's visiting what pages. I wonder what we could do with that. And so I put it on the pricing page and alerted our one rep we had at the time whenever somebody would hit the pricing page. And he saw somebody hit it that we knew, and it was somebody we had collected their lead from Dreamforce like 9 months earlier. Like, it's going to be weird if I say I saw you on the pricing page. So what he thought was better was, hey, I was just thinking of you from Dreamforce 9 months ago. It was like, Daniel, I don't know that was less odd, especially given that he was talking to a girl.
You almost need to call it out in that point, right, Jason? Like, hey, saw you on my pricing page, and it reminded me of a conversation that we had a bit ago.
That's the way to do it.
Honestly, it was so funny is that exact strategy. That's something we used at Outbound. So one day, we had like one of our SDRs said he had just got off a call. He had just booked a meeting. He was like, this is like a really great potential customer for us. And we're like, okay, well, what went on? And he's like, well, I literally happened to be sitting in front of my computer, right? I saw the HubSpot signal that this person who was like assigned to me, right, was on our pricing page. And so I just picked up the phone and called them because I'm like, I know you are here. Like, I get it. Like, I know you're here, right? And picked up the phone and called, and they happened to answer, and okay, great. Like, they ended up having a great discussion. So he said, man, if I could have an alarm go off every time like one of my like top accounts that I'm looking for is on the pricing page, like that would be amazing. So I was like, all right, well, I'll just build that for you, which I did, like pretty easily with the HubSpot workflow. But it was effective because, and let me back up and say, when we looked at like our marketing, our inbound leads, we saw that one of the top pages that people visited before they actually went to the request a consultation page was the pricing page. So we had like the marketing data to support like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. And then here we've got like the qualitative, like that's the quantitative data for marketing. Now we have the qualitative data from this particular sales development representative and getting that information. But I would say like, I think I know like it used to be like, oh, do you let people know you can see I would just, at this point, I would go all in. I think people know you're being kind of watched, depending on what market. I would say if you're selling into like financial services or security, maybe you don't. But for like we're selling to sales and marketing leaders, like they already know. Oh, yeah. That we know.
And that drift bot or whatever in the bottom right corner is not going to work as much as picking up the phone or even shooting an email or in another line.
Yeah. One thing before I forget, you were saying earlier about the questionable data quality around, technographics. I think this is something that's underappreciated that people don't spend enough time on is understanding the underlying stuff behind the data that they're getting. Yeah. And so technographics being a perfect example, because mileage varies radically on technographics, not necessarily from the provider of that technographic intelligence, but primarily due to what tech you're looking at. So some tech's really, really easy to be able to detect and know, like, if you want to know who's on Gmail, you can ping their server and get a definitive yes or no. Like it's binary, if they're on Gmail or not. Something
Yeah.
like Salesforce is notoriously difficult because there's no direct signaling around it. And so you've got to know the ins and outs of the data you're trying to pull and use as these signals and how much you can count on it or not.
100%, because what will happen, and this is why this is so important and how much damage it can do to your brand and to your like relationships internally. I've seen marketing teams that have taken that intent data, that technographic data, they've taken it and they've treated it as total truth. And then they use that to build account-based target lists and what have you for sales. And then sales goes and spends all this time doing all this really personal, really relevant outreach, only to find out, oh, like 1 out of every 4 of these that you sent me, they're not actually using this platform that this entire campaign is based on. And if you are the person, you're the prospect who's receiving it, you're like, if I've ever received something that was like so off base, like we don't use Oracle, right? But like I'll get an outbound, email that's like, hey, I'm reaching out to other fellow Oracle users and And it's like, I don't just like delete it. I'm like irritated. Like, why are you wasting my time? Like, I don't even remotely use this tool. So it can do a lot of damage.
100%. I got one of those asking if my agency is shipping stuff in from China. I was like, we're a growth marketing agency. We don't ship goods.
We don't have things. Yeah.
But realistically, what happens is like people hitting me up for a Shopify store, because we do have a Shopify store, but like if you just took 1 second longer, you'd realize we probably don't sell anything on there. And that's in the source code, right? Like that is objective, that store is on Shopify. That is not.
That it is. I mean, it's just, I mean, and like it's, but then I also can appreciate.
And then you sell them Klaviyo.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can appreciate that. It's like, yeah, every time I've had someone reach out to me and say, would love to help you with your marketing engine. Have you ever thought about outsourcing marketing efforts to an agency? And I'm like, did you look and see what we do? Right. But I know that I am just a name with a title of a company size using a certain technology in a list that no one has time to like spot check each and every one of those, right? That would not, I
think that's the reason for marrying that with the inbound methodology, which is so that you shorten that list of things you have to do so that you spend time, you use the inbound piece to whittle that down and help do qualification so that you then spend your time being able to double check and, do your qualification customization, stuff like that. So what's something that's keeping you up at night right now?
What's keeping me up at night is, right now with the market being a little bit, we're seeing some contraction, right? We're seeing across all industries, deal sizes, average sales cycle lengths increasing. We see buying committees growing. We see reps are having a harder time hitting original quotas, right? So I've been gathering this data from peers, folks in my network across the board. And what tends to happen, and I'm starting to see this now, is I'm starting to see some bad behaviors. So when things get tight, right, and everyone's got their goal that they're trying to hit, people start to do some, unnatural things. And they start to go into a little bit of panic mode. And then what that does is it creates
what type of things, unnatural things.
I see with channel partner relationships where there might have been like a really great kind of collaboration, where there wasn't much channel conflict, where direct reps and channel reps are now going head to head and competing because they feel like there's just fewer opportunities out there, right? There's less of that kind of familial, right? Even among team members, depending on how their regions, how their territories are divided or not, right? So you go start operating from a place of scarcity. And when you operate from a place of scarcity, you make bad decisions, right? Or we start to see massive discounting, which doesn't help anybody because it then just dilutes the value of the work that whether it's service or it's a product, dilutes that value. And once you offer a big discount in the beginning, it's pretty hard to think if you were thinking about like keeping that customer. And as a CEO, I would much rather keep customers and grow customers than constantly have to be replacing them with new. Although I mean, we're doing both, right? Like that's a healthy way to grow a business. But losing those customers is so much more costly than adding. I'm sorry, what do I want to say?
And keeping it.
Yeah, losing those customers are costly, and adding someone new is much more labor intensive than keeping those existing. So I worry about this like ecosystem, this like market that we're all in together, and you're just thinking about what matters to you and your job and your company, which makes sense because that's what I do too. But decisions that we make have an impact on a competitor in our space, or a partner we work with, or a vendor we use, and then that has a ripple effect. So that's the stuff that stresses me out because I can't control it.
It's funny that
it's stressy. Just kidding.
It's funny that you say that because I had something this week. I had a few of those come across, and it was like, that's kind of odd. That's a company I recognize, I largely respect, and I see them doing tactics that are questionable. Like sending a marketing email with like the regards, so it looks like it's a reply, and it's like, that's a funny tactic to send as a like templated company email, and not something I would expect from like a fairly established player that I'm used to seeing. And it's like, okay, like I hadn't put the pieces together until you said that, but it's like, okay, that makes a little bit more sense. People like desperation getting built in, and so people are starting to go and employ questionable tactics around stuff.
Is the email thing more because email's just significantly harder to work today, regardless, because there's so many more people flooding it, and it's going to spam, and like whether it's the emails I get from like not even just a different domain, which I think you should do a bit of rotating domains, but like a whole different company in the URL, like not just abc.co or abc.io, but qrs.org. I'm like, huh? I've gotten that.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's all driven by scarcity one way or another.
For sure.
So,
I mean, there's something to be said about like, there's going to be some experimentation, right? Like people should experiment, and like an email subject line is a great thing to A/B test. It would be interesting. I would like be curious. Did they run an A/B test, and were they looking at, well, here's ones where we didn't use this kind of tactic, and here's ones where we did. And like, point is, everyone's looking to get a leg up. Everyone is, right? So if everyone is, what does that mean to the collective? So
100%. Well, we have back-to-back events today, so I'm gonna have to cut this one a little bit short of the hour. But before we do, let the audience know where can they reach you.
Awesome. So I am pretty active here on LinkedIn, if you're watching on LinkedIn Live. So pretty active on LinkedIn. Jen Spencer, just let me know that you were watching this particular episode, this podcast, this show, so that I know how we met. Otherwise, smartbugmedia.com, or you can listen to my Intelligent Inbound podcast. It's on intelligentinbound.com as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jen. This has been amazing.
This has been awesome.
Thanks for having me. So glad to talk shop with you guys.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for watching. We'll be back same time next week, same place.
Same bat channel, same bat time.
And it works now.
Nice. Bye.